Hey, welcome back everyone. Great to see you on this Sunday morning. Hopefully we're all staying safe out there as this major nor'easter continues to strengthen and move up the East Coast. We're already seeing impacts out there this morning from coastal flooding to torrential rainfall and even gusty winds through much of the southeast. And that is only going to continue to worsen throughout the day and continue to move off towards the north and east, eventually affecting sections of the mid-Atlantic and northeast tonight and tomorrow before some snow comes in on the backside for our Monday and Tuesday. So in this video, we are going to break that down region by region, threat by threat, to make sure you are up to date with the latest information on this major storm system. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like button. And of course, comment. Let me know where you're watching from and what you're seeing out there. Really helps me to kind of gauge how the storm is unfolding. Those on-the-ground reports are just so important to continuing to forecasting these types of storm systems. I think with all that said, though, let's go ahead and jump right on into that forecast, as I know we all have a very busy day ahead of us. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, starting off with satellite imagery, you'll notice we, again, have quite the storm system on our hands this morning with a very pronounced and easy to see low pressure system just over sections of southern Georgia right now, up into parts of the Carolinas, seeing very heavy rainfall. And this one's pretty easy to see. We've got a very well-defined two fronts on it with very dry air punching in on the backside here and very warm, moist air coming up on the other side. And that, unfortunately, is what is going to lead to some very strong storms developing this afternoon right in this kind of region of the storm, and those will eventually move inland into the Carolinas later on today. Now, taking a look at radar imagery as well, again, very pronounced storm. It almost looks like a hurricane is working its way inland right now. I assure you, though, this is just a good old-fashioned nor'easter. Nonetheless, though, very heavy rainfall is currently falling here through sections of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. And this big shield of rain is bringing some gusty winds with it as well. Another thing I will mention on this map, this is what we've got to watch for. Notice this kind of band of tighter convection here that is beginning to move up towards the South Carolina coastline. That is what could potentially bring the potential of some tornadoes this afternoon, including very strong straight line winds as well. Multiple threats to unfold this afternoon, including the ongoing coastal flooding and inland flooding from the rainfall that we're already seeing. Another thing I will mention very quickly for our folks up into the Ohio River Valley and into the Tennessee River Valley, we are seeing some showers moving on through that area as well this morning. Luckily for you folks, the wind not as bad and the flooding threat not quite as strong, but definitely some much needed rainfall for a lot of folks up in that direction. So if you're up there watching, let me know, see how much rain you have picked up so far this Sunday. Alrighty, now taking a look at some of our threats kind of in depth here. We'll start off with the threat of severe weather today. And you'll notice we do have a slight risk of severe weather along the immediate kind of Carolina coastline here from South Carolina towards North Carolina, having the greatest shot of seeing those strong storms. Specifically in that yellow area on your map there is where it will have the greatest chance of seeing isolated tornadoes. But either way, we're going to see strong gusty winds even further inland than that. I know this is showing more of a tornado threat than anything, but in kind of this entire circled area, we are going to see some strong winds this afternoon and overnight tonight. So we've got to watch out for that as well. Alrighty, let's go ahead and dive now into some models here and give you the latest guidance on what we are expecting region by region. Now, again, this rain is continuing to move up into the mid-Atlantic right now, seeing a lot of that rain falling into South Carolina currently, and even up into sections of North Carolina. Now, that is going to continue throughout the afternoon hours, and this is about 1 o'clock this afternoon. You're seeing on the map right here. This is whenever we've got to watch out for the chance of some of those stronger storms to begin to work inland. You'll notice here this big section of kind of very strong storms just over South Carolina having the chance to produce, again, strong winds and a couple isolated tornadoes, as we have a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere today, and it's going to be plenty enough to begin to rotate some of these storms. Now, bringing this further ahead into time to about the 3, 4, 5 o'clock hour, still dealing with a very big, healthy shield of rain moving now up even into Virginia, and with that, the winds will be picking up. But the area, again, we still need to watch the most is where we have kind of this extra heavy area of rainfall. That's where we're going to have the greatest shot at some flooding, as well as the continued threat of some severe weather potentially further inland into South Carolina and up into the Outer Banks of North Carolina as well through the evening hours today. Now, as we move this further ahead, the center of low pressure, by the time we get into about midnight, likely working over the Myrtle Beach and Wilmington area of the Carolinas. And as this is happening, we're going to get another big blast of wind. You might notice today there might be kind of a two different time frame for the winds. One in the morning where it'll definitely stay gusty, picking up through the afternoon. Then we could get a bit of a lull for a lot of folks this evening before it picks up again in the overnight as the low pressure center itself moves over, going again later on tonight. Now, moving this further ahead into about the time we're waking up tomorrow, this low pressure system now working over the Outer Banks here and getting very strong. Again, sub 985 millibars. We're going to break pressure records for December. I can almost guarantee it. In fact, I think I saw this morning that the record low pressure in the month of December for Myrtle Beach is 990 millibars, or give or take a couple. We're likely going to break that by about 5 millibars or so this afternoon and evening. So again, quite an unprecedented storm system here that we're dealing with. Again, though, going into about the time we're waking up tomorrow, that center of low pressure likely right over Virginia Beach, Elizabeth City, North Carolina, that general area. And as this is kind of moving through, still expecting a big plume of moisture this time into the northeast tomorrow morning, with very gusty winds picking up and torrential rainfall coming down in buckets as well. Now, again, I want you to notice here, this is kind of a dry slot showing up on our models. So it might stop raining for a little bit tomorrow in the morning hours, and you might think, okay, we're done. The winds might die down a little, but likely, again, it'll pick back up as the low pressure center itself begins to move on through. Now, the good news is, I think by the time we get into tomorrow morning and into tomorrow afternoon, we should be clearing out through sections of the Carolinas. Likely still breezy, don't get me wrong, but the rain and the severe weather threat, as well as that coastal flooding issues, should begin to subside as the storm continues to pull off towards the northeast. And then you'll also notice here, here comes that snow on the backside. And I'm not going to touch on this quite yet. We'll talk about the snow more in depth at the end of the video. But just know that snow will be on the way for Monday afternoon for a lot of folks here in the east. All right, let's break down these wind gusts down here in the mid-Atlantic as well before we move on up to the northeast. And we'll also take a look at a couple more maps here for the mid-Atlantic as well. Now, again, very breezy conditions today. This is about 1, 2, 3 o'clock this afternoon. You'll notice most of the Carolinas getting in on wind gusts of at least 30 miles an hour. Some of us well past that, especially down here towards Myrtle Beach. Winds gusting up near 60, 65 miles an hour, not out of the question. Same story down here for southeastern North Carolina getting into the later parts of this afternoon. Now, as we crank this into this evening, I want you to notice these winds continue to pick up, and for more people. Now you'll notice right along the I-77 corridor from kind of Charlotte here down towards Columbia, South Carolina, and even up towards Greensboro, winds gusting into that 40 to 50 mile an hour range, and just a little off to the east, gusting up 50 to 60. This is very easily going to bring down some trees, cause some power outages, and again, bring plenty more issues with that rain falling as well. Now, another thing you should kind of focus on here is, again, look at these very strong winds coming in off the Atlantic. That is going to continue to contribute to some of that coastal flooding in the Outer Banks this evening, seeing those waters still very rough and continuing to push inland as that very strong offshore flow moves inland. Again, I will also mention that center of low pressure is kind of this little dead area where you're having the winds wrap around the low, so we could get a bit of a lull in the winds for the immediate places the low pressure moves over before once again picking back up into the overnight with very strong gusty winds through midnight. You'll see here still very gusty for most folks, although beginning to clear out slowly but surely from west to east across the Carolinas, from Greenville, Spartanburg, eventually clearing out into Charlotte, and eventually into tomorrow morning and afternoon clearing out up towards Raleigh, and things should improve for most folks outside of the mountains, where tomorrow afternoon that wind is once again going to pick up and become quite strong from the Shenandoah Mountains all the way down towards Boone and even down here into Cherokee, North Carolina, and everywhere kind of in between on those higher peaks. Very strong gusty winds for a lot of folks. And again, that's going to bring down trees and cause power outages for a lot of folks. So if you're still, if you've got kids still in school next week in this part of the country, I would not be surprised to see some closures or delays as we are still kind of picking up the mess going into Monday and Tuesday afternoon. And if you're in the higher elevations at that time, you're still kind of dealing with some snow as well there on the backside. All right, another thing we do need to worry about today is flooding, not just at the coast, but inland, where we will see some very heavy rainfall. And you'll notice we do have a slight risk of flash flooding here from New York City all the way down through Philly, Trenton, into D.C., Baltimore, back down towards Richmond, Virginia, Raleigh, North Carolina, back towards Greensboro and Charlotte, and even down into Columbia and the Myrtle Beach and Charleston areas. So a lot of folks having the threat for some flash flooding this afternoon. We'll have to keep up with that threat as well. So again, if you're watching, in the comments, let me know how much rain you pick up at your place come later this evening. All right, now how much rain specifically are we talking about still to come? Well, wouldn't surprise me to see another half a foot of rain in isolated spots down here in the eastern sections of South Carolina along the coast from Charleston up towards Myrtle Beach and even up towards kind of the Lumberton, North Carolina area. A lot of rainfall still to come. You'll also notice this kind of breaks down in layers pretty easily here. We see this quite often with low pressure. You get a lot of convergence at the surface on one side, and as that rises up and goes out, it has to sink somewhere else. So where we see that sinking, there's going to be a very fine line between who sees a lot of rain and who really doesn't see much rain at all, and it's just kind of a cloudy day. So I think from, again, I-77, Charlotte, Columbia, kind of in between Florence and Raleigh, this general corridor here, about 2 to 3 inches of rain looks pretty likely. If you're east of there, kind of in the eastern Carolinas, I think 3 to 5 inches of rain is pretty likely. If you're all the way back towards Greenville, Spartanburg, Asheville, and kind of surrounding areas in the western Carolinas, maybe only half an inch to an inch of rain. Again, going to be a very fine cutoff, so have to watch out for that. But that same general idea will go up all the way to the coast here. So find your community. If you're kind of on the right side of this very random blue squiggly line I drew, probably more rain impacts. If you're on the left side, maybe not so much, although it definitely could still rain. All right, now let's kind of begin to look at the Northeast a little bit, where once again we could have a severe weather threat going into tomorrow from coastal New Jersey up through Long Island into Connecticut and Rhode Island as well. Main threat tomorrow, again, a couple isolated tornadoes as well as a very strong straight line winds gusting well past the 60-mile-an-hour range. So could definitely see some severe storms in this part of the country tomorrow as well. All right, let's time this thing out for the Northeast now with our latest impacts that are expected. You'll notice right now out there still relatively calm. It's going into this afternoon and evening that rain shield begins to work out of kind of Virginia up into the Northeast, bringing with it some gusty winds as well. So this on your map is about the time the sun's going down. You'll notice this rain beginning to pick up and continue to push off towards the north and east, and eventually going into about midnight tonight, here comes that strong wind with those heavier bands of precipitation down through the Delmarva, and eventually working up the I-95 corridor. By the time we get into about 3 o'clock this morning, likely in Philadelphia, very heavy rainfall, very gusty winds, and that will continue up through the Northeast, going into about the time the sun's coming up tomorrow morning. So this is about 6, 7, 8 o'clock a.m. tomorrow, and you'll notice, look at these very heavy bands of rainfall as the storm continues to strengthen, that pressure continuing to drop, allowing the atmosphere to really ring out a lot of rainfall here, but nonetheless raining for everybody. I do think, though, there will be a band of kind of extra heavy rainfall kind of here through sections of the higher terrains of the Pennsylvania up into the Finger Lakes and even up into upstate New York, seeing some heavy rain here. Now, as we move this into tomorrow afternoon, this is as the low pressure is approaching itself. This is when we'll have to watch out for some severe storms. You'll notice kind of, again, in these coastal regions here, some of these storms could roll in off the Atlantic and still be plenty strong enough that they produce a couple isolated tornadoes. Definitely have to watch that threat tomorrow. Another thing that the models are kind of new to picking up on, but is possible, we could see some snow in the extremely higher elevations of Pennsylvania and New York tomorrow. Not out of the question, although it'll be a very wet snow and likely won't accumulate to much until the actual cold air catches up on the backside here. Now, going into tomorrow afternoon, this low pressure likely moving right up the Hudson River Valley, bringing with it very strong winds, still some scattered rain showers, and again, that cold air on the backside with snow catching up quickly going into our overnight Monday and Tuesday. And again, we'll break that threat down even more here in just a moment. All right, how about the winds up here in the Northeast? I know on the live stream I had last night, a lot of people watching up here curious about those winds and are they going to lose power? Well, I think today will still be relatively calm. Again, going into this evening and overnight, this is midnight tonight, or give or take an hour, and you'll notice here come these very strong winds ashore down through Delaware, into eastern Maryland, through coastal New Jersey, winds gusting up towards 50, 55 miles an hour. And those winds continue to push inland into New Jersey, Pennsylvania by the time the sun's coming up tomorrow. Again, from Philly up through Jersey and into Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, winds gusting in that 50 to 60 mile an hour range. By the time you're waking up tomorrow and getting into tomorrow afternoon, the winds only continue to worsen throughout the day, especially for you folks back in kind of eastern New England from Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, up into Maine. Very strong gusty winds tomorrow afternoon and even into the evening hours, through much of Maine and even up towards the Boston area before hopefully clearing out by the time we're waking up on Tuesday morning. And that's whenever we'll watch for some of that snow to move on in. All right, again, we do have a flooding threat tomorrow as well, an excessive rainfall outlook for much of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and even northern Jersey through Long Island and the Scranton area of Pennsylvania. Now, I will mention some of our models have, again, been hinting at a heavier band of precipitation out here, so don't let your guard down there. I know you're not in this outlook, but nonetheless could still see some very heavy rainfall that could lead to some flooding tomorrow afternoon and evening. Now, rainfall totals here, again, much like the southeast, it's going to be a pretty fine line. I think if you're kind of back towards Pittsburgh, Buffalo, that kind of side of the northeast, not all that much rain really on the way. But once you get out towards about State College, Syracuse, Binghamton, and up the I-95 corridor from D.C. all the way through Boston and into Maine, I'm more likely to see 2 to 3 inches of rain out of the storm system, and even more than that in those higher elevations where we're able to wring out a little bit more moisture. Alrighty, let's kind of break down this snow threat for you really quickly now with our latest model that just got done running here. So, again, this is the low pressure this afternoon, but what we're going to focus on, is the snow itself. So watch these kind of blue lines up here that are indicating very strong troughing of cold air kind of beginning to dive into the country. And you'll notice as it does, we're going to get some snow showers this afternoon to break out across portions of Minnesota, Wisconsin and Michigan. You'll notice the bands of snow moving on through there from now through this evening and even into the overnight. Now, by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning here, you'll notice more snow breaking out across western Michigan into northern Indiana, and eventually here into Ohio, seeing some of that heavy snow moving on through, some snow squalls, if you will, and eventually that works into the Appalachia chain tomorrow afternoon with pockets of even heavy snow falling in those higher elevations, but even in the lower elevations. If you're watching really anywhere in Ohio, eastern Kentucky, eastern Tennessee, up through West Virginia, even if you're not in the mountains, do not be surprised to see some snow falling tomorrow afternoon, and it could even accumulate to a quick inch or two in spots. Can't rule that out at all. Now that snow continues into the overnight, really especially in those higher elevations of North Carolina, West Virginia, up towards Pennsylvania. Very pockets of heavy wet snow that those ski resorts I'm sure are going to be very happy to hear about moving on through all day tomorrow, even into Monday evening and into Tuesday overnight, before eventually that snow then kind of begins to pull off into the northeast from Pennsylvania up through New York State, and eventually going into our Tuesday afternoon, can't rule out some snow showers further into New England from Boston down towards Providence and even into sections of Connecticut, Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Could see some snow during the afternoon hours of Tuesday. Unfortunately, though, this is as far out as this model goes. So just know, though, in the future that snow continues to move off towards the north and east. All right, let's break down these snow totals for you. And again, we're going to have some pretty impressive totals on the way here. If you're watching in Minneapolis, kind of down through Milwaukee, Green Bay, not too much snow within the next 48 hours, maybe a dusting to an inch. If you're watching, though, up in the UP of Michigan or kind of down here into the western shores of Michigan and down here through north central Indiana, a pretty good helping of snow on the way here. And I just realized that the marker is a little offset there, so let me redraw those lines for you. Again, if you're watching up in this area, let me draw that again. There we go, a little bit easier. You could definitely see some bands of heavy snow move on through this afternoon and evening, and even into tomorrow, some heavy snow as well. So can't rule out 3 to 5 inches, I think, in the UP of Michigan, pretty likely. Same for the western shores, and even down into north central Indiana, can't rule out about 3 to 5 inches, but more widespread 1 to 3 inches kind of in the surrounding areas. Now, taking a look at the mid-Atlantic, again, these higher elevations of West Virginia, North Carolina, and kind of down or up into sections of Pennsylvania as well, most likely to see the heavy snow here. I think that is going to be pretty easy to come by with, again, 3 to 5 inches of snow, maybe even half a foot to a foot in the highest peaks. But again, nonetheless, accumulation of snow very likely in these higher elevations. Again, if you're watching in lower elevations as well, kind of out here towards Ohio, can't rule out a dusting to an inch, maybe even 1 to 3 inches along the lake fronts up near Cleveland of some snowfall. Same story down here in eastern Kentucky. I think you'll see some snow out of this system. Likely not enough to cause huge travel impacts, but nonetheless, definitely going to be enough to kind of add some festive spirit, if you will, to this Christmas week that's on the way. Now moving on up towards the northeast here and kind of taking a look at snowfall totals here. Again, I think most of the snow that falls here will be out towards kind of New York State and into portions of western Pennsylvania there, but cannot rule out snow further towards the east, out here towards Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and even down towards Connecticut, Rhode Island. I know not a lot showing up on this map, but don't let your guard down, because I do think some snow could make it this far east, and if it doesn't by Wednesday, there are some signs maybe a weak kind of low pressure tries to ride up the coast here, and that could try to bring some snow itself. As I move this ahead, you'll see some snow totals picking up there going into the couple of days before Christmas. So definitely we'll watch out for that going later on into the week, and we'll talk more about that here in a later video in a couple days. Alrighty, so again, big time nor'easter. Today's really the big day for it. It's getting undergoing cyclogenesis, if you will, bombing out even almost, meaning it's just getting very strong very quickly as it moves up the coast, and will continue to do so throughout today, overnight tonight, and into tomorrow as it's impacting the mid-Atlantic, southeast, and northeast. Before then, we get some of that festive snow, luckily, on the backside. Now, I may be storm chasing here soon. I still haven't quite made up my mind, but I've kind of got to figure it out now if I'm going to drive on down to the South Carolina coast or not. If I do, then obviously I'll be doing that. If I don't, I may have a live stream later today. I don't want to promise anything, though. Just kind of depends on how things are looking. With that said, though, again, I do hope you have a great rest of your Sunday out there. Stay safe, and I'll see you all next time.